We are back with Allison. Allie, and Allison, you were telling us about this challenge that God gave you about seeing, especially poor children, and seeing them through His eyes. And that has now led to your story, among many others, being featured in this brand new book devotional by Compassion Canada called Eyes to See, Reflecting God's Love to a World in Need. Why do this?
Well, first of all, for Compassion, we love the church.
Yeah.
And we recognize the church as God's chosen instrument to bring hope and healing to our world. And so that leads us not just to partner exclusively with the church in the developing world, but to invest in and equip and mobilize the church here at home. So that's really why we created this, in the spirit of serving the church, supporting them in questions that they're asking about poverty and injustice, and of course, leading all of us closer to the heart of God and closer to being transformed into the image of His Son.
And what are you learning about maybe people's perceptions of
Yeah.
the poor? Because we see the poor every single day we walk out onto our streets of our communities.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a few different perceptions and stereotypes that we are looking to combat. And I think first and foremost, before we think about our perceptions of those living in poverty, it would be this sense that sometimes we think that as North Americans that we have it all together, that we would be living in this ideal state, and that our job may be to save other people or to bring them to our way of being. You know, the flip side of that coin would be sometimes we have perceptions of those in poverty that perhaps they're lazy. It's painful to even say, or they're looking for a handout or just need to get a job. And so from our perspective, we were really hoping and intentionally looking to break down these barriers between us and them and to look at the mutuality. Yeah. You know, we were all created in God's image with inherent dignity, worth, gifts, and capacity. And we are all experiencing different types of brokenness to varying degrees. And I would say God created us and called us to be in relationship with one another and to learn from one another and to journey with one another. So that's really the spirit of Eyes to See.
And as I was going through the book, there are so many stories kind of like yours of people who have really been motivated to see their neighbors. And I call them neighbors because, you know, even if you're living in a house or you're living on the street, you're still our neighbors. And so I know that there's a lot of symbolism behind the name Eyes to See. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. So early in Genesis, the servant Hagar gives God the name El Roi, which means the God who sees me. And it's this recognition that it can be so easy for us to engage the world with blinders or with barriers, either intentionally as a way to protect ourselves from fear or a sense of guilt, or sometimes inadvertently. But the reality is we serve a God who sees, a God who sees every need, every tear, every poverty, every injustice. And as His children, He is calling us to do the same, to be people who see Him and see others more clearly.
And so this is 6 weeks that you're asking people to invest in. What's the hope that will come out of this? What do you hope that people will do after they've read or done this devotional?
Yeah. Well, our hope is that Eyes to See impacts people in 4 ways, that it would impact their head, their heart, their hands, and their habits. So by their head, we really are aiming to give them a deeper understanding of poverty, both the biblical roots and a biblical understanding of poverty, but also practically how it plays out today. With heart, we quite simply want people to be compelled and drawn into a deeper love of God and a love of their neighbor, as you said. By hands, it's our hope that people really recognize how God has uniquely called them and equipped them to respond to the needs of those around them. And by habits, we're really inviting people into this others-oriented lifestyle of love and compassion and generosity, that in our everyday, ordinary, simple lives, that we would faithfully steward all that God has entrusted to us.
And there's a video series that goes with the book. Tell us about that.
There is. So there is a film series that is hosted by a gentleman named Sean Groves. So he is a Compassion ambassador, speaker, gifted theologian. And so he actually brings really rich biblical teaching to the series. And then we have different voices and perspectives from a diverse group of people across the country and around the world. And we share stories of Canadian churches, Canadian individuals, and stories of churches and individuals around the world.
And if people want to get a copy of Eyes to See, how do they do so?
Absolutely. They can head to the website at www.eyes2see.ca.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Allison, for your time.
My pleasure. It was great being here.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.